Tonight, stopping the spread. Authorities search for 40 people treated by a beautician diagnosed with coronavirus. Good evening, I'm Kirsten Aiken. This is ABC News. Sun Yang's day of reckoning. China's greatest swimmer banned for 8 years for doping. The 14-year-old boy who jumped off a bus to stop a man allegedly attacking a woman. And it's that very colourful time of year when Sydney lets down its hair.
I'm Lydia Feng on Oxford Street, where the Mardi Gras parade is about to get underway.
First it was China, now Iran is a no-go zone for Australian travellers as the federal government strengthens its efforts to stop the spread of coronavirus. The decision comes just a day after a Gold Coast beautician who recently returned from Iran was diagnosed with COVID-19. She's the first person to test positive in Australia who hasn't been to China or Japan. Health officials are now desperately trying to track down dozens of the woman's customers who could have been exposed. Rachel Rieger reports.
A busy Gold Coast shopping centre, now the focus of coronavirus fears in Queensland. Health authorities are urgently trying to contact up to 40 people who visited the Hair Plus salon at Australia Fair and received a facial from a beautician who's now in hospital with coronavirus.
The people we're most concerned about are those people who have had direct contact with an individual who's a confirmed case for more than 15 minutes.
The 63-year-old arrived from Iran on Monday and fell ill at work on Thursday. She remains in a stable condition in isolation, Queensland's 9th confirmed case of COVID-19.
We know we'll be seeing an epidemic here in Queensland eventually. We'd like to contain the virus as we have been for as long as possible.
The case has prompted the federal government to take a tough stance to slow the spread from Iran.
The travel advisory for Iran will be lifted to level 4, which is do not travel.
Foreign nationals will be forced to spend a fortnight outside Iran before being allowed into Australia. Citizens and permanent residents will be allowed in, but will need to isolate themselves for a fortnight.
We are particularly concerned about Iran at the moment. It would seem to be the highest risk outside of China.
There is likely at this stage a high level of undetected cases, and therefore those cases won't be intercepted or identified on departure from Iran.
Iran has officially recorded more than 380 coronavirus cases. It's 34 deaths, the highest outside China.
We're not immune, but at this stage, the general community is safe.
The World Health Organization is still trying to get its team into Iran.
The team would be there by now, but there are severe issues with getting flights and access to Iran right now.
The virus has now spread to almost 60 countries, with first cases reported in New Zealand, the Netherlands and Nigeria. The WHO has raised the global risk level to very high, but has not yet declared a pandemic. Rachel Rieger, ABC News.
The newly announced Iran travel ban will be enforced from tomorrow. For more, let's bring in political reporter Dan Conifer at Parliament House. Dan, how long are the bans likely to remain in place?
For however long is needed, Kirsten, seems to be the federal government's approach, which insists that it'll follow the advice given to it by its medical experts to the latter through this COVID-19 outbreak. And to give you some indication, the travel ban already in place on foreign nationals coming to Australia from China, that's already been extended 3 times, and that ban is essentially identical to the one announced in the Iranian context today. But there does seem to be a particular level of concern about the coronavirus outbreak in Iran. Officially, there's been about 400 cases reported with a mortality rate there of about 1 in 10. the highest outside Hubei province in China, where this outbreak all began. But the government believes there are many more unreported cases in Iran, and that's why it says that Iran is a specific case, and it's indicating that it's not going to extend these travel bans to any other countries, including nations such as Italy, South Korea and Japan, where there are actually more cases reported than in Iran. Kirsten?
Dan Conifer reporting. The economic fallout from the coronavirus has continued to send markets tumbling around the world. Wall Street went through the motions, but there was nothing to cheer about as a 1.4% fall brought the week's total losses to more than 12%. The US Federal Reserve Chairman foreshadowed interest rate cuts to help the economy weather the storm. But there are fears the coronavirus could just be getting started.
We've only seen 1 week now in Europe and 1 week in other countries too. It's too early to say, central bankers, you need to act now, because if the situation does get far worse, central banks have already made their move.
European markets also took a pounding. Germany's DAX fell 4.2% in Friday trade. The Australian swimmer Mac Horton says the fight against doping in sport goes on after Chinese Olympic gold medalist Sun Yang was banned for 8 years. Sun was found guilty by the Court of Arbitration for Sport after he smashed a vial of blood during a routine drug test in 2018. National Sport reporter David Mark has the story.
All of a sudden, the career of a 3-time Olympic gold medalist is over.
The athlete is sanctioned with an 8-year suspension starting today.
The bombshell announcement would seemingly provide some vindication for the Australian swimmer Mac Horton, who famously refused to share the podium with Sun Yang at last year's World Championships.
I think regardless of the outcome, it was always going to be a statement to the world. And my stance has always been about clean sport and never about nations or individuals.
He says the fight against doping will go on as he trains with other members of the Australian swimming team for the Tokyo Olympics.
It is really inspiring that Mac's been able to stand up for what he believes in and I guess have the courage to do so. There's very minimal people that would be willing to do that.
Despite the ruling, Sun will keep all his medals, meaning Horton's silver at the World Championships won't be upgraded to gold. Sun maintained that his decision to smash a vial of his own blood in 2018 was reasonable because his testers didn't have the proper ID, but that didn't wash with the court. He has 30 days to appeal to the Swiss Federal Tribunal. He said in a statement, "This is unfair. I firmly believe in my innocence. I will definitely appeal to let more people know the truth."
And so a potentially embarrassing situation at the Tokyo Olympics has been avoided after a sometimes farcical 18 months. The court hearing, for example, was chaotic because no one could understand the translators. But there are some who say the system still isn't working, despite the decision.
What I see is an anti-doping system that's actually broken. I see a CAS that can't even hold a hearing in 2 different languages. I see an international testing body that doesn't know how to carry out tests properly. And so I see a system that's actually failing athletes.
I think sports themselves have come to the realisation that testing of itself is simply not working.
Which means, despite everyone's dream of a clean Olympics, no one can ever be completely sure. David Mark, ABC News.
Police have praised a brave teenager who jumped off a school bus to stop an alleged domestic violence attack in Sydney's West. The offender allegedly grabbed the 14-year-old's throat in the intervention, but he says he would do it all again to help the woman.
A brave young man who, heading home from school, could not turn a blind eye.
He kind of pinned the girl up against kind of like a fence. And when I approached him, I said, "You right, mate?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm right." I said, "I saw you hitting this woman." And he told me to F off and that it's not my business. And I said, "Mate, look, I'm not going anywhere unless you leave this girl alone." And then that's when he grabbed me by the throat.
It was courageous. I think for a 14-year-old boy to intervene would have been very, very confronting, let alone an adult getting involved.
The teenager ran from a bus stop in Riverstone yesterday to the aid of the 27-year-old woman. Police say she suffered a cut lip and a bruised nose. They'll put the teenager's name forward for a formal commendation.
The assault would have kept going, would become more serious, and so his intervention stopped that female being assaulted further.
You know, I did what any person should do and step in.
Bystanders then intervened. The man was later arrested.
Bravery, big time, to intervene like that.
It takes a lot of guts, unless if he's 6 feet tall.
The 32-year-old faced Parramatta local court today, charged with domestic violence and common assault. He was refused bail.
What this teenager did gives me hope. It gives me hope that people, particularly men, will step up and speak out against domestic violence.
I just looked him dead in the eye and I wasn't scared of him. I was showing I'm not scared of you, you know. In my mind I was thinking, if you think you're so tough, you're picking on a woman that's half your size, and now you're choking a kid that's half your size.
Taking a big stand on domestic violence. Emily Lawrence, ABC News, Sydney.
The South Coast's Mogo Zoo has reopened its doors 2 months after staff stayed inside the park to protect their animals from a devastating bushfire which swept through on New Year's Eve. Local families impacted by the horror summer were handed free tickets to come and see the zoo's much-loved giraffes and gorillas, and to even get a glimpse of the lion cub Phoenix.
Born during a time of fire and fury, Phoenix the lion cub is a symbol of Mogo's recovery. The New South Wales Premier keen to meet the zoo's newest star.
Phoenix, you're so special.
After declaring the zoo ready for visitors again.
Oh, wow.
Just 2 months ago, staff were confronted with these scenes. Instead of evacuating to the beach, they stayed behind to protect their animals.
We probably saw the flames for the first time at 10:30, and from that moment on, we didn't rest. We were still putting out fires 5 days later.
Remarkably, the animals were saved and the zoo was largely unscathed. But it was a different story in Mogo Township.
In my view, the Mogo Zoo is a role model for how people should prepare and plan for bushfires and disasters impacting them.
It's really humbling when you speak to people who've lost their homes, lost their businesses, know someone who's died, and yet today is something they're all welcoming as a day of hope.
The Wildlife Park officially reopens tomorrow, but today is a chance for a select group of local families impacted by the fires to welcome back a popular tourist attraction and celebrate a story of resilience.
Oh, it's great. The kids love it. Absolutely love it.
I was thinking this is the end of the world. No one's going to make it.
It's a real symbolic gesture for the whole community.
Usually the busiest time of the year, the zoo has been desperate to welcome back some visitors.
It's beyond a belief to open again. It's just such a special feeling when people and animals are enjoying each other's company and having those encounters. So it's the best feeling ever.
Marking a very special milestone in the South Coast's recovery. Tom Maddox, ABC News, Mogo.
Well, the harbour city is about to be painted the colours of the rainbow. The annual gay and lesbian Mardi Gras is kicking off in the middle of Sydney. Lydia Feng is on a very colourful Oxford Street. Lydia, it looks like the dykes on bikes are revving up behind you. What else is in store tonight?
Yeah, good evening, Kirsten. You're going to have to excuse the noise. Dykes and bikes have just roared to life. Well, there are about 500,000 revellers lining the street right now to welcome the 12,500 participants in this year's parade. There are about 200 floats as well, each of them with their unique take on this year's theme, which is what matters. And organisers hope that that theme will spark conversation and debate among people to think about the serious issues in our community at the moment.
What matters to me, everyone being who they are and being loved for who they are.
After the summer we've had, we're just happy to come together as a community and show our support for everyone in the RFS and in the wider community as well.
Acceptance probably is the most important thing for all of us.
What matters is making sure that people are free to love who they want to love.
I love for people to see the diversity in drag, to see that it's friendly, it's fun, it's for everybody.
Australia's firefighters will also be honoured in tonight's parade for their tireless efforts over this summer's bushfire season, and no doubt the crowds will be cheering them loudly when they march through Oxford Street tonight. And the public will also be treated to international guests tonight, including singer Sam Smith, Dua Lipa and Kesha, who will no doubt be making sure that the Mardi Gras party continues well into the night.
It sounds like a big night. Lydia Feng, thank you. The race for the White House is heating up, with the Democratic vote for who'll take on Donald Trump heading south. The next primary in South Carolina will see the largest percentage of African American voters having their say. As North America correspondent Catherine Diss reports, the rate at which people of colour are being locked up is top of many voters' minds.
After spending the prime of his life behind bars, Honore Williams is forging a new future.
Literally $20 worth of drugs 3 times ended me up in prison for a life sentence.
The 37-year-old fell victim to South Carolina's 3 strikes law for drug possession, which carries a life sentence without parole if found guilty by a jury.
You might have a man in there for murder. He gonna get out on a murder before he get out on having possession of a drug.
He managed to overturn his conviction, but only after serving 12 years. The law was intended to crack down on violent criminals, but it also swept up minor offenders. The result, minorities suffered and prison populations ballooned.
I find it appalling and extremely disturbing, and it bothers me. And those are the kinds of things that, as a public defender, kept me up at night.
African Americans make up just 12% of the country's adult population, yet they account for more than a third of its prisoners.
As myself, I'm a formerly incarcerated person. Here you go, get a copy of it.
Lester Young served 22 years for murder after a drug deal gone wrong. He's now fighting to keep people out of the prison system.
Everyone in the state of South Carolina have a loved one that is incarcerated or knows someone, a classmate, a friend, a boyfriend or a girlfriend that has been impacted by the criminal justice system.
This is the first time the African American vote comes into play. They make up 60% of the Democratic electorate here. South Carolina is considered Joe Biden's firewall, but the question is whether he can recover after a slow start to the race.
His progressive rival, Bernie Sanders, is gaining ground among voters of colour.
We need to end private prisons and detention centres.
Back home with family, Honore Williams isn't sure who he'll back yet. He's just hoping the country is as determined as he is to drive change. Catherine Diss, ABC News, Charleston, South Carolina.
A free legal service that's helping bushfire and flood victims battle their insurance companies is running out of money. The insurance law scheme has been overwhelmed by calls for help, but it's now having to let staff go and turn people looking for assistance away. Consumer Affairs reporter Liz Hobday looks at how the service helped one couple whose property was damaged.
Elsa Seligman and Andrew Gardine have survived a summer of fires and floods.
Have to put in this plank.
Can you go ahead of me, please?
Okay.
They were left stranded on their property near the New South Wales mid-north coast after the culvert they depended on for access was destroyed. So, to go anywhere by car, they had to first use a tractor to cross the creek.
Blake's property is burning around the flagpole. Over.
The fires hit the area at the start of November.
A little bit wild.
The threat continued for 2.5 months. Then the floods washed away what was left of the culvert.
Has to have a car dragged out backwards through a flooded stream. Surely we can do better.
Insurance company NRMA initially agreed to pay for some property damage, but refused to pay the $70,000 to rebuild the culvert, saying the couple wasn't covered under their policy.
We're paying $4,000 a year, premium level insurance, and we can't access our property. We can't leave our property. What's their thinking?
Elsa Seligman turned to the Insurance Law Service for help lodging an appeal. The service helps hundreds of people each week.
And have you lodged a claim? How is that going?
It's part funded by the federal government, but that money is under review. This means the service is now reliant on another income stream, the fines imposed by ASIC. But since the Banking Royal Commission, ASIC is taking cases to court more often, so this source of money is drying up too.
We are going to lose nearly 5 solicitors by December. That's half the capacity of the Insurance Law Service. If we're answering 40 to 60% of calls now, what are we going to do with half the staff?
Last week, after the service helped Elsa and Andrew lodge an appeal, NRMA decided to pay out their entire claim.
I think they do incredible work.
Work the service hopes to continue. Liz Hobday, ABC News.
Disability advocates are ramping up their fight to end what they say is discrimination against older Australians. People over 65, when the National Disability Insurance Scheme was introduced, missed out on coverage. It means they're out of pocket by thousands of dollars for equipment like wheelchairs and leg braces. James Hancock reports.
Lynn Bates can't walk anymore after contracting the polio virus as a child.
If I didn't have my motorised wheelchair, I would be housebound.
She also needs a hoist to lift her in and out of bed. Both pieces of equipment set her back $14,000. But she says it would have been free if she was under the age of 65 when the National Disability Insurance Scheme was introduced.
It's discrimination, actually.
Peter Wilcox also has post-polio syndrome.
I really don't understand why there was a group that were discriminated against, and it's a group that's getting smaller.
His ageing leg braces are putting him in danger of falling over, and his wheelchair has a worrying wobble. Replacing them won't come cheap.
My immediate needs are around about 20, well, actually it's more 30,000.
Both Peter and Lynn would be facing an even bigger bill without some state government funding for assistive technology. They say the federal My Aged Care program doesn't fund such equipment, and hundreds of thousands of other disabled Australians are in the same predicament.
The funding is vastly insufficient. There's incredibly long waiting lists for support. We're talking upwards of 18 months to even get any sort of government funding.
Disability and ageing groups are growing ever frustrated by the situation. More than 20 of them have formed an alliance and are stepping up their fight for new money and better coordination of existing assistive technology funding for over 65s.
We're certainly not advocating that the National Disability Insurance Scheme be expanded to cover everyone. We don't think that's feasible. All we're asking for is people to be given equitable access to the services they need.
The Alliance is sending a delegation to Canberra next month to meet with senior ministers and will be armed with an online petition calling for reform.
You go to visit your local member, state or federal member, they don't know what's going on either.
The federal government maintains that care and support is available through the aged care system. James Hancock, ABC News, Melbourne.
A small band of 70s car owners has come together in Jakarta to mark the end of the road for their beloved motoring brand, Holden. The loss of the Holden name is a sad moment for hundreds of Indonesian revheads whose Aussie muscle machines were assembled in Java half a century ago. As Greg Jennett discovered, there's a little bit of Kingswood country still left in the capital.
The lion's on a roll and roaring up a storm. So a statesman in contrasting colours. This is Kingswood country, not in Junee or Jandakot, but Jakarta, where Holden owners are fired up to keep a forsaken brand alive.
When I first heard the news there were going to be no more Holdens, I felt disappointed and sad.
Dewa is a 3-time owner. There's the station wagon, the Tirana, and the most precious of all. Forget the Chevrolet badge, this one's as Kingswood as they come. Made in Australia, built in Indonesia 58 years ago. And handed down to the mid-30s mechanic by his dad and his grandfather before him. Of the thousands of Holdens assembled here, only about 500 or so are still running, doted on by enthusiastic members of the National Owners Club. Celebrating their Holden history is an obsession stretching far beyond Jakarta. It's a petrol-soaked subculture of its own, online and on road. It's still going the distance and commanding centre stage.
I just love Holden because of the designs and everything, and the best part, it's an Australian car. It's like something different.
So globalisation brought Holden to Indonesia, and now globalisation takes it away again too. But while ever these engines are ticking and those tanks are so full of nostalgia as they are, it seems there'll always be a road here somewhere with a Holden on it.
Immortalising in moving metal, a badge that is no more. Greg Jennett, ABC News, Jakarta.
Thousands of people have gathered in Bega on the far south coast for an NRL pre-season match to raise funds for those hard hit by bushfires and drought. The game between the Parramatta Eels and Penrith Panthers was a sellout. All profits will go to the Salvation Army's Rural Assistance Appeal.
To have, people who are so, important and famous and great role models who are willing to come down here and give their time and actually care about what we've gone through down here, it just means everything.
Sport really sticks you together, whether that's rugby or AFL or soccer or basketball, it doesn't matter what it is, communities come together over sport.
The match ended in a 22-all draw. And the AFL had its bushfire relief match last night, a State of Origin which saw Victoria beat an All-Stars team by 46 points. The Big V overcame a 30-point deficit in the third quarter, kicking 11 consecutive goals. Dual Norm Smith medalist Dusty Martin was best on ground with 2 goals and 23 disposals.
Thank all the supporters in the AFL for putting it on for a great cause, and a lot of great players tonight.
All proceeds from the State of Origin clash go to the AFL's Community Relief Fund, helping to rebuild clubs affected by the bushfire crisis. The Waratahs have claimed their first win of the Super Rugby season. New South Wales defeated the Lions 29-17 in Western Sydney last night. The victory over the South Africans ends a 3-game losing streak and lifts the Tars off the bottom of the Australian Conference ladder. In cricket, New Zealand has warmed up for its World Cup T20 clash against Australia on Monday with a 17-run win over Bangladesh. New Zealand won the toss and elected to bat, but they were bowled out for 91 in the 19th over. Hayley Jensen then took 3 for 11 to help her side dismiss Bangladesh for 74.
The end. Sophie Devine makes it a divine ending.
We wanted to get done with today and get the points in the bank, and now it's on to Australia, who we've played a lot of cricket with and against, and we're really looking forward to it. Any time we come up against the Australians, doesn't matter what sport it is, it's going to be a big one.
India easily accounted for Sri Lanka to make it 4 wins from its 4 group matches. It reached the 114-run victory target in the 15th over. Now let's take a look at the weather, and the sun came out in Sydney for the leap day with maximum temperatures in the mid-20s. Overnight lows were generally below average west of the Divide, tending slightly above average nearer the coast. Cloud over northeastern New South Wales generated some isolated showers. Ballina saw 3 millimetres of rain. None fell in Sydney, but the monthly rainfall total for February surpassed the average by more than 324 millimetres. Daytime temperatures too were generally above average over the coast. It reached 34 at Walgett and Burke. It was a similar story for most of the capital cities today, with sunny and warm conditions. The satellite shows thick cloud over northwest Australia, with ex-tropical cyclone Esther bringing heavy rain and storms. Cloud over inland parts of WA and Queensland is generating some showers and storms. The capital city should experience hotter temperatures tomorrow. Showers are possible in Adelaide, Melbourne and Hobart. It will be mostly sunny in the state's northeast. There'll be a low to moderate fire danger on the mid-north coast and Hunter regions. On the water, winds will strengthen through the day, reaching up to 25 knots offshore south of Nora Head in the late evening. Sunny in the southeast, there's a low to moderate fire danger in the Illawarra, Shoalhaven and far south coast areas, a high danger about the southern ranges. There's a strong wind warning for waters off the Bateman's coast, reaching up to 30 knots in the late afternoon and evening. Mostly sunny inland and hot during the day. The fire danger will be greatest in areas about the southern slopes. On Sydney waters, winds will be north to northeasterly and seas between 1 to 1.5 metres with a southerly swell. In Sydney tomorrow, the temperatures are forecast to reach the high 20s and the UV index will be very high. The sun will come up on March at 6:42. Looking at the week ahead, and Monday will be the hottest day with the maximum expected to reach 35. Showers are possible from Tuesday with a greater chance of rain on Tuesday and Thursday. That is all from ABC News. Enjoy the rest of your evening.